Hi there, you're welcome. Today we're going to be looking at the contingency argument for God's existence. We started looking at some arguments for God's existence. We've looked at the moral arguments for God's existence. We've looked at the Kalam cosmological argument for God's existence. And today we're going to go one better. We're going to look at the contingency argument for God's existence. As we go ahead, do well to like this video, subscribe to this channel, turn on the notification bells, and we will progress. So the contingency argument was propounded by Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. He was German, and it's a simple argument. It's a pretty simple argument for God's existence, and it has three premises and a conclusion, right? So the first thing to note is the meaning of the word contingency. Contingency means something that is potential, something that is not absolute, something that is not sure, unpredictable, something that may or may not occur. That's what it means to be contingent. And in this argument, he tells us that there is a way that we can understand the universe and understand the cause of the universe. Again, it's a cosmological argument. What that means is that we are going back from the presence of the universe and we're trying to look backward to see what caused the universe. We had a cosmological argument that we've looked at before, the Kalam cosmological argument, and the link to that video is going to be in the description box. And today we're looking at Leibniz's contingency argument. Again, I said it has three premises and a conclusion. The first premise states that everything that exists has an explanation of its existence. The second premise states that if the universe has an explanation of its existence, that explanation is God. The third premise is the universe exists, and the conclusion is the explanation of the universe's existence is God. So, the question is, why is there something at all? Why does anything exist? Why does the universe exist? Why do you exist? Why does anything exist rather than nothing? And why does the universe exist? The first premise says that everything that exists has an explanation for its existence. And this makes sense. Everything that exists has an explanation for its existence. The reason you exist is because you had parents who met. The reason your phone exists is because a manufacturer manufactured it. The reason YouTube exists is because we have people who make YouTube work. Everything that exists has an explanation for its existence. It follows, therefore, that the universe must have an explanation for its existence. And if people say that the universe does not need to have an explanation for its existence, then that's a case of special pleading. If everything has an explanation for its existence, why should the universe not have an explanation for its existence? So, we know that everything that exists has an explanation for its existence. The catch here would be that the explanation for the existence of things can either lie in an external source or in the necessity of its own nature. What that means is that there are some things that exist necessarily and there are some things that do not necessarily exist. For example, I do not necessarily exist. I can die today for all we know, and the universe will keep on going. So I'm not a necessarily existing thing. I don't necessarily exist. I exist contingently. However, there are some things that exist necessarily. So everything must have an explanation for its existence, either in the necessity of its own nature or in the external thing that made it to exist. That's the first premise. The second premise is that if the universe exists, then the explanation for the existence of the universe would have to be God. How do we know that this premise is true? What is the universe? The universe is all of space, time, matter, and energy. That is the universe. So, if we are looking for an explanation for the universe, we cannot look inside the universe. We would have to look outside the universe. Anything that caused the universe to exist, anything that is the explanation for the universe, cannot be inside the universe. It would have to be outside the universe. And God is a being that is spaceless. God is a being that is timeless. God is a being that is immaterial. God is a being that is extremely powerful. And God is a mind, So if we have an explanation for the universe, that explanation would have to be outside the universe. And the argument is saying that God exists outside the universe. Therefore, God is the cause, or God is the explanation for the presence of the universe. The third premise tells us that the universe exists, and then conclusion. The explanation for the universe is God. It's a pretty straightforward argument. A lot of the times, people have issues with the first and the second premise. The first premise says that everything that exists must have an explanation for its existence. And then I went on to clarify that the explanation for the existence of anything can either lie in the necessity of its own nature or in the fact that it has an external explanation. There are things that exist necessarily. God necessarily exists. So if someone said, what's the explanation for God's existence? Well, the explanation for God's existence is in the necessity of his own nature. He is a necessary being. He is not a contingent being. Another thing that exists necessarily is numbers, abstract objects. So numbers, sets exist necessarily, right? Again, they exist by necessity of their own nature. And then the second premise to say that if the universe has an explanation for its existence, then God will be the best explanation for the existence of the universe. And we have said because we cannot be looking for the explanation of the universe inside the universe, because everything that we know, space, time, and matter, all of those exist by an external source. So if you created something, that thing exists because you created it. So that's how the universe exists. And so we have to be looking for the explanation of the universe outside the universe. And we said that God is the only being that is outside the universe that can actually cause something. Abstract objects, numbers cannot cause anything. They exist necessarily, but they don't have causal power. But God is extremely powerful, spaceless, timeless, immaterial. He has a mind, and so he can cause. We know that the universe exists. Therefore, we know that God is the explanation for the universe. Therefore, God exists. See you next week.